Good afternoon, this is your captain speaking with just a little flight information. We're flying at an altitude of 37,000 feet and our airspeed is 400 miles an hour. Couple little facts here. I'm packing a Colt King Cobra, that's a .357 caliber firearm with a black rubber grip and a 6-inch barrel, capable of piercing body armor at a distance of up to 27 feet. And it can put a hole in human bone and flesh the size of the Grand Canyon, which, by the way, is coming up on the left-hand side of the plane. So just sit back and relax and enjoy the rest of the plane.
No, not you. Not you. Your organization's terrible. Should I tell you? Should I tell you? Oh, you're Boy Scouts, but you know life. You know life. You know I'm totally off script right now.
Hello, this is News Dive, and I'm your host, Shane. It is Friday, July 21st, 2023, and let's dive into the headlines. In the first year of abortion being nearly fully banned in Texas, infant mortality rose for the first time in 7 years, nearly entirely undoing years of progress on infant mortality in a single year, new data shows. Fulton County, Georgia District Attorney Fani Willis has amassed enough evidence in the investigation of former President Donald Trump's effort to overturn his 2020 election loss to charge a sprawling racketeering indictment next month, according to The Guardian. Senator Chuck Grassley on Thursday released the FBI report that Republicans claim proves that Biden's accepted bribes from Ukraine. But there's just one problem. There's still no evidence. Years after U.S. President Joe Biden campaigned on a promise to ban new oil and gas leases on public lands, his administration earned fresh criticism from green groups on Thursday with a proposal to update regulations for the federal fossil fuel leasing program. The Libertarian Party is arguing that calling for insulin, a life-sustaining medicine for millions of people, to be free is equally offensive as slavery. And who prompted them to make the comparison? Former Ohio State Senator Nina Turner, who is black. On Tuesday, Turner tweeted, "Insulin should be free, medicine should be free. Certainly not a radical demand for life-saving drugs, nor more broadly in the context of 73 other countries having free or universal health care. Nor when recalling that the average cost of insulin in the United States is nearly $100. The next closest is Chile, at a little over $20. The cost in the following 31 countries ranges from $264 to $1648. But instead of even remotely engaging with any of those facts, the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire tried something different. Quote, "Nina Turner picking crops should be free," unquote, the party tweeted. Climate scientists warned Friday that worsening atmospheric and marine heat waves threaten food security around the world. Soaring temperatures jeopardize the stability of the world's agricultural land and its oceans, putting potentially billions of people at heightened risk of hunger and conflict. And that will conclude today's headlines. Why aren't Americans jumping for joy about the economy? Pundits have come up with the answer. Americans just don't get how good they've got it. You don't want to say that Americans are stupid, Paul Krugman recently wrote, pondering this question before quickly suggesting this was the case anyway. There are huge gaps between what people say about the economy and both what the data says and what they say about their own experience, Krugman remarked, blaming partisanship, the media, and economist predictions for the gulf in perception. He's far from the only one. In a piece titled, "America is Doing Just Fine," millionaire MSNBC talking head Joe Scarborough pointed to macroeconomic figures like the GDP growth and the size of California's economy to insist that your country is doing pretty damn well. In a recent appearance on Stephanie Ruhl's show on the network, economist Justin Wolfers assured viewers that it was all just the warping effect of partisanship and that Americans simply tell themselves stories that are completely at odds with reality. Let's give these commentators their due. It's true, there are many bright spots in this economy. The 2021 stimulus worked. combining with the unusually generous pandemic relief programs to pull the country away from the economic cliff and to give a shot in the arm to the personal finances of many American households. What's more, it looks likely that contrary to neoliberal doomsaying, the inflation that followed the stimulus, when it wasn't being driven by the shocks of the Ukraine war and corporate greed, really was simply a temporary side effect of this spending, with inflation recently easing despite a lack of job losses. Unemployment is low. Those at the bottom saw the biggest wage gains, and income inequality has actually narrowed for the first time since Richard Nixon was president. But as heartening as all this is, fixating on these metrics masks just how badly the US political economy continues to fail the people it's meant to serve. More than 2 million people have lost their Medicaid coverage as of mid-July since President Joe Biden unwound the pandemic emergency declaration, many of them simply thanks to administrative errors, with millions more tipped to lose their affordable, publicly provided health insurance coverage in a country where not having it can mean bankruptcy or death. The end of the declaration also triggered food stamp cuts that deprived 42 million Americans an average of $9 a month, even as high as $250 a month. Evictions are soaring around the country, more than 50% higher than pre-pandemic averages in some cities, as the protections renters enjoyed during the emergency have similarly ended. As a result, homelessness has shot up nearly 40% from last year in major cities like New York and Chicago, an understatement of the problems in cities like San Francisco and Seattle, where the crisis is at its fever pitch, weren't included in that particular count. Meanwhile, the student loan repayment pause that gave households financial breathing room to the tune of hundreds of dollars a month is now likewise kaput thanks to the White House's June debt ceiling deal. Childcare, which has gone up 220% in cost over the past 30 years and is leading women to drop out of the workforce to save money, is set to get even more expensive this September when federal funding for providers is due to run out. Another pandemic-era welfare policy started under Donald Trump that will sunset under the current Democratic president. While the Inflation Reduction Act will eventually lower prices for some prescription drugs when that provision kicks in 3 years from now, at the moment they're so expensive that 9 million people have failed to properly take their medication as a way to trim costs. The highest share of adults, 28%, since 2014, skipped medical treatment due to cost last year, while Obamacare premiums went up 3.4% this year after 3 consecutive years of falling. The pundits insist that all that's happening is that Americans are expressing how they feel about the economy, not what they feel about their own supposedly fantastic personal financial situations. But this isn't borne out by recent surveys. A March poll found 70% of Americans are financially stressed, with 58% living paycheck to paycheck. Meanwhile, the Federal Reserve's 10-year-long survey of household economics and decision-making found the proportion of those feeling worse off has spiked 15 points this year to the highest level in the poll's history, while the share reporting that they're doing at least okay financially dropped by the largest number on record from the previous year's high. A different March poll found that 60% have no retirement savings account, while 45% can't cover a $1,000 emergency. In fact, a Fed survey conducted in October last year and released in May paints an even more dire picture, with 37% unable to cover a $400 emergency. According to another, nearly a third of Americans report a net worth of zero or in the negatives, including about a fifth of those aged 59 or older. A poll released by Provident Bank in March has 17% of Americans with no savings at all, and an uptick of those who report spending hundreds more per month on groceries. The U.S. Census Bureau's Household Pulse Survey for June had nearly 27 million Americans reporting not having enough to eat either sometimes or often, 12% higher than the same time last year, and 4% more than even the month before. If we were to believe the pundits, these people are all delusional. Their lack of savings, inability to afford food or health care, feelings of financial stress, or even experience being thrown out of their homes, they've simply made it all up because a Democrat is in the White House. Well-paid commentators on cable news and legacy papers, after all, know what's going on with your financial situation better than you do. It's not hard to see what's going on here. There's an election coming where Trump or another scary Republican will be on the ticket. And there is a pronounced lack of enthusiasm among both rank-and-file Democrats and big money donors for the Democratic incumbent. There's a very real risk they're going to screw this up. And as always, rather than pushing the president to do more to protect working Americans and take on corporate greed, and thereby give them an actual stake in the election result, the Democratic machine has decided instead to blame the ignorant masses for not realizing how great their leader is, preemptively absolving themselves of any blame for what happens next year in the eyes of loyal party voters, while lulling those same voters into self-assured inaction. The Biden stimulus worked, as many pro-democratic pundits and left-leaning economists said it would. The problem is that this alone was not enough to fix the deeply rooted structural pain that's plagued the country long before the pandemic, and there seems to be little appetite to pressure the current White House to try. If pundits want to spend their time assuring liberal readers that it's the voters who are wrong about this economy, that's their prerogative. But let's not pretend this is much more than political messaging driven by election fears. In the meantime, there certainly are Americans out there telling themselves stories at odds with reality. They just happen to all be in the media. And that will conclude today's episode. Please like and follow the show. Leave the show 5 stars and a good review. Share it around. Follow the show on social media. And I will talk to you next time. Have a good weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.